This is the best way of putting this. If the one player that you've played in your career that people can say was definitively better than you is LeBron James, and Giannis and Kobe are like slight maybes because of where they were in their career, you're elite. I don't care what anyone else says. Kevin Durant will go down as one of the greatest players of all time, especially of this generation, and he definitely deserves his credit for doing so. How you guys doing? It is July 19th, 2020 out here in this quarantine, and for this episode of The Elite, I was going to do a GOAT profile on Kevin Durant because to me, at least as a player, as someone that's been watching basketball at least since 2006, 2007, I think Kevin Durant is one of the very few players that's been able to do what he's been able to do to inflict terror on the league. I just know this dude is a walking nightmare for everyone that stepped on the court against him except for LeBron. LeBron could probably get some sleep against Kevin Durant, but not much as he would other nights. Ever since this dude every time this dude steps foot on a basketball court, he shows the world that he's one of the most unstoppable offensive players that this world has ever seen. I mean, he's 7 feet tall, 240 pounds. He can make a shot anywhere on the court. He can dribble like a guard. He plays incredible defense. And I mean, you can just see, even with the Warriors dynasty, considering how strong that dynasty was, he was by far the strongest player. He was by far the most talented player on that team. And by being the best player on a team that happened to be a dynasty, I think that's what makes Kevin Durant elite. And the fact that he has a season MVP and 2 championships with two completely different teams, by the way. And the fact that he's still in Brooklyn at 31. He's still going to miss this upcoming season, but he's going to come back and he's going to inflict his terror on the league. But just to give you a little bit of background, like I said, Kevin Durant is 31 years old, coming out of D.C. He was known as one of the top high school prospects in the nation early on. It was him and Greg Oden going back and forth. When they went to college, Katie went to Texas and Greg Oden went to Ohio State. And in the first year, Kevin Durant would go on to be the first freshman to be named the Naismith College Player of the Year award while at Texas. While in the 35 games that he played, he averaged 25.8 points, 11 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks a game as the 2006-2007 Longhorns finished third in the Big 12, finishing ranked 11th in the country as they lost to USC in the tourney in the round of 32. But at that point, Kevin Durant had established himself as already one of the best basketball players in the world. He was already named a high school parade player of the year. Once he got to college, he was named the Big 12 Player of the Year, All Big 12, All Defense, All Freshman, Rookie of the Year, Tourney MVP. He was given the Naismith Award. He was given the Wooden Award. And that year, he was named the AP Player of the Year. And that's after just 35 high school games played at Texas, which may go down as one of the best single-season, one-and-done seasons in NBA history, right? Going on to his career once he gets to the pros. Following that one season at Texas, it turns out the Portland Trailblazers wanted Greg Oden with the number 1 pick. So the Seattle Supersonics at the time were the team that picked up Kevin Durant with the 2nd overall pick in the 2007 NBA draft. His very first season in Seattle would end up being the last team the last season that Seattle has had a basketball team. So, in his very first season, he would start all 80 of the games that he played in, averaging 35 minutes a game. He would go on to average 20 points, 4 rebounds, 2.4 assists, a steal, and a block per game, shooting 43% from the field, 29 from 3, 87 from the free throw line. And that season, the Supersonics would finish 20-62 with the absolute worst record in the West. But Kevin Durant did go on to win Rookie of the Year that year. And, of course, he was named to the All-Rookie First Team. But he was starting to get recognized as at least the best player within his own class. And considering he's in this GOAT list, I would imagine like that normally he would have to win the Rookie of the Year to be recognized that early to get onto this list in the first place. He wasn't named an All-Star. After all, the Supersonics were bad, but he was definitely on the league's radar at that point. His age 20 season came in 2008-2009, and this was the season that the OKC Thunder, or the Supersonics, moved to OKC, and they drafted Russell Westbrook. This season, he would go on to average 25 points a game, averaging 39 minutes a game while starting in 74 of the games that they played in a season in which the Thunder would finish 23-59. They finished with the third worst record in the West, but still a couple games better. But like I said, KD would go on average 25 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, slashing, shooting 48 from the field, 42 from 3, 86 from the free throw line. And as after this is the season that he really kind of started to grow with Russ, but within his first 2 years in the league, this was his age 20 season, and then he was already averaging 25 points a game in the NBA, which isn't a very easy thing to do. His third year in the league in 2009, 2010. This is the second year that the Thunder were in OKC, and Russell Westbrook was going into his second year, and James Harden was first drafted to the OKC Thunder. Kevin Durant would go on to start in all 82 games that he played. He went on to lead the league in scoring, averaging 30.1 points per game. And he averaged 7.6 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.4 steal a game, averaging shooting 48% from the field, 36.5% from 3, and he shot 90% from the free throw line. And the Thunder that season would end up making the playoffs for the first time in about 6 seasons. So, I mean, when they won 50 games that year. They lost to the Lakers that would end up going to the finals and winning. But in the first year that Scott Brooks was the coach there, and KD was the youngest player to average 30 points a game, or to lead the league in scoring. He did it at 21 years old, and he was named an All-Star for the first time in his career. And at that point, that's when the league started to see KD for what he actually was. He was named to the All-NBA first team for the very first time in his career. And already by the end of his third season, he was recognized as a top 5 player in the NBA. And out of the young trio of him, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook, he was the lead dog on that team. That would lead into his 2010-2011 season, his age 22 season, where he would start all 78 games of the games he played in a season where the Thunder finished 4th in the West, way better than 8th, with 55 wins. In that season, KD would go on to be named an All-Star for the second time in his career. He would go on to be named to the All-NBA first team for the second time in his career, as he would go on to finish leading the league in points for the second year in a row, averaging 27.7 points, 6.8 rebounds, 2.7 assists, a steal and a block a game, shooting 46% from the field, 35% from 3, and 88% from the line. And once again, like at the end of his age 22 season, by the time even going on, like I said, he was named the first team All-NBA player for the second time in his career. The same time he was named an All-Star for the second time. That year, the OKC Thunder would go on to lose to they would on to beat the Nuggets in the first round, 4-1. They would beat the Grizzlies in the second round in 7, and they would go on to lose to the Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals, 4-1. The very season that the Mavericks went on to beat the Miami Heat, but of course by that time they had lost in the Western They lost to the Western Conference Finals, proving that they were a title contender. And before going into next season, before his age 23 season, KD was recognized twice by the NBA of being one of the top 5 players in the NBA, and at this point he was only 23 years old, and he had proven to be the best player on a championship contender, as the OKC Thunder were 1 round away, and the one team they lost to ended up winning the finals. So this would lead into his age 23 season. In 2011-2012, KD, after starting in all 66 games that he played in, will go on to lead the league in scoring for the 3rd year in a row, averaging 28 points per game, averaging 8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.2 blocks, shooting 49 or 50% from the field, shooting 39% from 3 and 86% from the free throw line, as the OKC Thunder finished second in the entire West with 47 wins in those 66 games. KD would be named to his third All-Star game, in addition to being named to his third first-team All-NBA team, which, once again, is not natural. He would go on to be recognized and just as one of the best players in the NBA, especially on a title contending team as the Oklahoma City Thunder. After getting the second best record in the West, they would go on to sweep the very Mavericks that beat them the previous year and won the championship. They went on to beat the Lakers in the semifinals 4-1. They beat the Spurs in the conference finals 4-2. And they would go on to lose to the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals in 5 after an amazing run that ended with LeBron James winning his first title over KD. That year, Kevin Durant would go on to win the All-Star Game MVP in his third career All-Star Game, and James Harden was named the Sixth Man of the Year as James Harden decided to leave that summer for Houston, as after 3 years of proving he was one of the best players, he had decided he wanted to go be a star in his own city because OKC wasn't really giving him those options. But by that point, Kevin Durant had already proven for 3 years in a row he was a top 3 player in the NBA, and starting from his third year on, he went on to lead the NBA in scoring for 3 consecutive seasons before he was even 24. So, going on to his age 24 season, KD would start in 81 games in a season where the OKC Thunder finished first in the West with 60 wins in an 82-game season. In that season, he would go on to average 21 points a game, 7.9 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 1.4 steals, 1.3 blocks, all while shooting 51% from the field, 42% from three, and he shot 90% from the free throw line. That was the first time he registered a 50-40-90 season, all in the league. And at the same time, he was named an All-Star for the 4th year in a row. He was named to the All-NBA first team for the 4th year in a row. And like the OKC Thunder were one of the best players. They were one of the best teams in basketball, despite James Harden leaving, and Kevin Durant was basically still playing in another world. Didn't lead the league in scoring for the first time in 3 years, but he still did average. He still had a 50-40-90 season, which will go down as one of the best seasons and one of the best shooting seasons in basketball. And I mean, it goes down as one of the reasons why Kevin Durant is one of the league's greatest. That year, the Thunder would end up beating James Harden and the Rockets in 6 games, and they would end up losing to the Grizzlies in 5 after leading the West. And many people can really pin that on KD and Russ, but they're really kind of together. But they did lose that series. But that was the season that KD did 50-40-90 because he did accomplish that in a season. And this is all following the Olympic Games where KD joined, LeBron and others to help USA secure the Olympic gold. But this all kind of happened together. But at this point, KD was still recognized as one of the 5 best players in the world for 4 consecutive seasons, and at this point there was the question was between him and LeBron, where his only rival at that point in terms of skill, in terms of how good he was at that young of an age, was LeBron James. And at this point, Kevin Durant has still shown that he was a young scoring phenom, as his dominance in scoring went on to his very next year. Whereas in his age 25 season, Kevin Durant would start all 81 games and lead the league in scoring for the 4th time in 5 years, as the OKC Thunder ended up with a 59-win season, finishing second in the West. KD that season would go on to, like I said, he would go on to post his highest scoring season up to date, averaging 32 points a game. He still averaged 7.4 assists, 7.4 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.7 blocks, shooting 50% from the field, 39% from 3, 87% from the free throw line. Once again, he was named to his 5th consecutive All-NBA first team in addition to his 5th All-Star game. He would go on to be named the MVP for the season as he would put on this highest scoring season. And the OKC Thunder that season would go on to beat the Grizzlies in the first round in 7. They beat the Clippers in 6 when the Clippers signed Chris Paul, and they went on to lose to the Spurs in 6, the season that the Spurs ended up beating the Miami Heat and cutting Miami's three-peat short. But the Thunder were most definitely that team, and Russell Westbrook and KD were proven to be a dynamic duo that was definitely capable of doing some dangerous things. But at that point, KD had shown for at least the 5th year in a row, that he was one of the best players the NBA had ever seen. And up until that point, the only thing that he was missing was a championship, because that year he finally won an MVP. And that narrative would play into his next season, his age 26 season in 2014-15. KD would only start 27 games in a season where the Oklahoma City Thunder would finish 9th in the West and completely miss the playoffs. But Russell Westbrook did carry his own, and Russell Westbrook did lead the league in scoring. But in that season, KD would average 25 points a game in those 27 games. He averaged 6 rebounds, 4 assists, shooting 50% from the field, 40% from the three-point line, 85% from the free throw line. But he still did clinch an All-Star game. He was named an All-Star for the 6th straight season after his first 2 years in the league, in which he was 19 and 20. But his 6th year in the league his 6th consecutive year of being an All-Star and his 8th year in the league proved that he was definitely a force to be reckoned with in the league, and he was definitely the phenom that everyone saw him to be in high school. Leading on to his age 27 season, his final season in OKC, he would go on to start all 72 games in a season where the OKC Thunder would end up finishing 3rd in the West with 55 wins. This season, he would go on to average 28.2 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and a block, averaging 36 minutes a game. He shot 50% from the field, 39% from 3, 89.8% from the free throw line, that close to being a 50-40-90 player for the 2nd time in his career. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the 7th time in his career. He was named to the All-NBA 2nd team for the 1st time in his career. And at that point, he'd come back from his injury, and there were a lot of other players in the NBA, of course, at that time. But that Thunder team did end up making it into the playoffs and made it deep. They ended up beating the Mavericks in the first round in 5. They beat the Spurs with Kawhi Leonard in 6. But they ended up losing to the Warriors 4-3. The Warriors team that ended up going 73-9. The Thunder did have them up 3-2, but the Warriors did clutch out the wins. They did crunch out the wins in the final 2 games, and they ended up sending the Thunder home in the Western Conference Finals, and they were probably at their best to take on LeBron James, while LeBron James was taking the Cavaliers through the East. That was a much anticipated finals matchup, but it would lead on to and that season would end with the Warriors winning the first champion, or the Warriors losing the championship to the Cavs. The Warriors would then call on Kevin Durant to join their team to help them become an unstoppable superpower, because without Kevin Durant, they were already title contenders that had already won. But KD would be that extra player that would put him over the top, and they were still able to sign him. They were still able to give him a max contract. If you're Kevin Durant, and up until that point, the only thing you need is a championship. How do you not take that deal? Of course, naturally, in the move that carried the most scrutiny in NBA history, Kevin Durant signed a 3-year contract to go play with the Golden State Warriors, the team that already the previous year had set the record for winning the most games in a regular season with 73. But Kevin Durant decided to go that path because already up until that point, he already made the All-Star game 7 times. And at that point, people were already starting to recognize him as people already knew that he was one of the league's best, but now they wanted to see him in Golden State to see what he could actually do, and this is when KD cemented his legacy. In 2016-17, in his age 28 season, Kevin Durant started all 62 games that he played in a Warriors season in which the Warriors finished 67-15. They finished with the best record in the West for the 3rd year in a row up until that point. But he went on to join a historic team, and during that season, he would average 33 minutes a game. He averaged 25 points per game, 8.3 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1 steal, 1.5 blocks a game, all while shooting 54% from the field, 38% from three, and 88% from the free throw line. That season, KD would end up getting named to his second NBA All-Second team. He was named an All-Star for the 8th consecutive season. And his legacy has shown that he went to a whole other team where they were a bunch of ballers, and he ended up ascending to the top and being their number one go-to guy, especially when it led into the playoffs. That year, they would end up sweeping the Trailblazers in the first round. They swept the Jazz in the conference semis. They swept the Spurs in the conference finals after they were down and Kawhi had them up, but Kawhi got hurt. But the Warriors did end up sweeping the Spurs that year. And they ended up beating the Cavaliers in 5. Kevin Durant secured the Finals MVP. Draymond Green secured the Defensive Player of the Year. And the Golden State Warriors were champions for the second time in 3 years, thanks to the addition of Kevin Durant. Because you can argue that without Kevin Durant being there, it wouldn't be that much. It would be much more of a competition. It would be a lot easier for the Cavs to win. But yes, Kevin Durant was the nail in that coffin. And at this point, he had proven that not only was he one of the best players in the league and his only competition was LeBron James, but he had proven that if you add him to a championship team, he would be outright the best player, and that he could. And I think that's an argument to add for his case as one of the best players in the league. And he's proven that he can win a championship. So at that point, he had won an MVP with the Thunder. He had been a 50, 40, 90 player with the Thunder. He went to the Warriors and immediately became the Finals MVP. That says a lot. And at that point, as of 2017, Kevin Durant is an NBA champion. And that would continue on to his age 29 season. In 2017-18, Kevin Durant would go on and start in 68 games in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with the second best record in the West. And they would finish with 58 wins on the season. And that year, Kevin Durant was named an All-Star for the 8th year in a row. And then he was also named to the first team for the 6th time in his career. His second year in Golden State, it was almost flawless. They really wanted to give him the MVP, but they couldn't because he was on the Warriors. This year, he averaged 26 points a game, averaging 6.8 rebounds, 5.4 assists, almost 2 blocks a game, shooting 52% from the field, 42% from three, and 89% from the free throw line. And like I said, he was named to his 9th career All-Star game. And that year, the Warriors in the playoffs, they would go on to beat the Spurs in the first round in 5. They beat the Pelicans in 5. They beat the Rockets in 7 when the Rockets had Chris Paul and James Harden. And then they ended up winning and sweeping the Cavaliers in their second straight finals. They won 3 of the last 4 finals, but 2 straight with KD, and KD was named the Finals MVP in back-to-back years on the same team as Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Steph Curry being known as the first player to win a unanimous MVP, and Klay Thompson, who is known as one of the only player in NBA history to be an All-Star in multiple seasons and never shoot below 40% from 3 in any of his seasons. So that's what, but out of all those players on that team, and they had Draymond Green, who was the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, but KD was outright the best player of that team, and it showed as he won his second NBA Finals MVP while being there. And by then, it has shown that his first Finals MVP wasn't a fluke. He was, at that point, he had solidified himself as the best player on the best team in the NBA, which is a lot to say, which is something very few people can say. It adds to KD's legacy. I think it makes you elite if you're the best player on a team of elite players. And at this point, he was a back-to-back champ with nothing left to prove except for maybe winning a championship on a team that wasn't his, or that a team where that wasn't a championship contender without him. So that goes into his age 30 season where he would play his last season in Golden State. He would go on to start all 78 games in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish first in the West for the fourth time in 5 consecutive years, the second time since KD was there. And in that season, following their back-to-back titles, KD would average 26 points per game, 6.4 rebounds, 5.9 assists, zero point 0.7 steals, 1.1 blocks, shooting 52% from the field on 17.7 attempts. He shoot 35% from three on five average attempts. He was shooting 89% from the field on 6 average attempts a game. That season in 2019, he would go on to be named to the All-NBA second team for the third time in his career. And he was named an All-Star for the 10th time, making it a full decade in which he was named one of the NBA's top 24 players, something that many Hall of Famers still can't say. And KD's still in his prime, and his career is most definitely not over. Of course, and then adding to all that, the Warriors with the first seed, they would go on to beat the Clippers in the first round. KD got hurt in the playoffs, I want to say against the Rockets when they beat him in the semifinals and when they beat him in 6. Without KD, the Warriors would end up sweeping the Trailblazers in the conference finals 4-0. And once they got to the NBA Finals, KD got hurt in the very first game, and I believe Klay Thompson or Steph Curry, one of them was hurt as well, which would lead to and the Raptors played an amazing series, and the Raptors won that finals, but many people are giving a Rockets a bit of an asterisk. I don't, but people are giving them an asterisk because KD wasn't in the game, and they know that if KD was in the game, they more than likely would have made the series a lot harder for Toronto than it was. But following that, KD decided to sit out all of this season after deciding to sign with the Brooklyn Nets with a major deal in his contract. But just looking back on KD's career and just seeing that, because he's 31 right now, coming out of high school, he was already one of the top prospects. He improves his worth by averaging 26 points a game at Texas, which is still a Power 5 school that plays good competition. He went on to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where he proved himself as one of the league's best. And in 1 year, he did prove that. In 1 year, he was a 50-40-90 guy, proving that he was one of the most potent shooters his league has ever seen. And in the year after that, he had cemented himself as an NBA. He cemented himself as an NBA great by winning an MVP. He decided to join the Golden State Warriors after they had beat him in the conference finals, only to win and he won 2 championships with them, cementing himself as a champion. So as of right now, after this last season, KD sits at 31 years old with 2 championships, 2 Finals MVPs, the 2014 NBA MVP, 10 NBA All-Star appearances, 2 NBA All-Star Game MVPs. In the most recent season he played, he was the MVP. He was named to the All-NBA first team 6 times, 5 of which on the Thunder and 1 on the Warriors. He was named to the All-NBA second team 3 times. He was an NBA Rookie of the Year. I mean, there's so much to put under his resume, and because he's an MVP and a multiple-time champion and the best player of a dynasty in NBA history, I believe KD deserves a GOAT profile, and he still has much more to contribute. I think if he were to walk away right now, the NBA, he would go down as at least a top 10 player in NBA history, at least in my book. One of the most unstoppable players in NBA history, and he still has so much more to go. I mean, he's only 31. LeBron's 35. I imagine, considering KD doesn't have to be as physical, he just has to shoot the ball. KD has a lot more years to him. And with this Brooklyn Nets roster with Kyrie Irving, and they have Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Garrett Temple, I kind of like this Brooklyn Nets roster that they're building around Kyrie Irving and KD. I think once both of them come back next year, the Nets are immediately title favorites, or they're at least Eastern Conference favorites over the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics, just because Kevin Durant is that dynamic and he's proven in the playoffs. So with that, I mean, there's not much more to say. I mean, this dude's accomplished basically everything. I think that when it's all said and done, the only player that was better than him in his era was LeBron James. And that is how dominant I think Kevin Durant has been. And I appreciate you for listening to all 30 minutes of this. If you ever get a chance, check out my boy KD. I believe as of right now, he's probably wearing number 7 for the Brooklyn Nets. And he's not going to play for the rest of this bubble as of right now. But when he comes back, I promise you, he's going to be one of the players I try to watch every game of because he's that good. Watch him alongside Kyrie Irving because Kyrie Irving is another top player that I think is incredibly sneaky. And those two together might run through the East considering how not as strong as the West the East is. And with that said, I've said my piece on Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is an all-time great. When I look back at the 2010s, other than LeBron, KD was definitely the best player of this era. He deserves to be remembered as so. And with that, I mean, there's nothing else I can say. But when you watch him play, just there's nothing really to ask yourself. If you just watch yourself, you can just see just in how he plays, how elite of a player he is. I can't wait to see how Kevin Durant's career finishes. I can't wait to see if he wins any more games. I've even seen Thunderstruck. That's how much I like Kevin Durant. And yeah, with all the Twitter stuff, yeah, that's kind of weird. But as a basketball player, saying that he's elite is an understatement. He's one of the best players to ever walk this planet, and considering he's playing right now, and I've actually gotten to see him since the beginning of his career up until right now. I'm really shocked to see. I'm really surprised. I'm shocked. I'm surprised, and I'm amazed to see what Kevin Durant has done up until now, and I can't wait to see what he does with the rest of his career. And yeah, I've said my piece. Respect my boy KD. Peace.